I never thought my ordinary life in a quiet American suburb would collide with the darkest underworld of crime. My name is Elena Hayes, 24 years old, a kindergarten teacher from Seattle who believed kindness was the strongest weapon in the world. One rainy evening, while walking home from the school, I saw a small, injured fox cub trapped in a wire fence near the abandoned warehouse district. Its tiny body trembled, eyes wide with fear and pain. Without thinking twice, I knelt down in the mud, gently freed the little creature, wrapped it in my scarf, and took it to the local animal shelter. The vet said it had a broken leg and needed care. I visited every day, feeding it milk, singing soft lullabies, and whispering, "You're safe now, little one. I've got you." I named him Finn. Little did I know that this small act of compassion would unravel my entire world, because Finn wasn't just any fox. He was the disguised form of Alessandro Rossi, the most feared mafia king in North America, a man whose name made hardened criminals tremble. And from the moment I saved him, he decided I belonged to him forever. 3 weeks later, Finn had healed completely. I released him near the forest edge with a heavy heart, watching his fluffy tail disappear into the trees. "Goodbye, sweet boy. Be free," I whispered. Life returned to normal. Lesson plans, children's laughter, weekend coffee with friends. But strange things started happening. A black luxury SUV began appearing outside my apartment. Expensive gifts arrived anonymously, a diamond necklace hidden in a bouquet of roses, a new coat that cost more than my yearly salary, and notes in elegant handwriting that simply said, "A thank you." I felt watched, but I brushed it off as paranoia. Then one night, as I locked up the school, strong arms grabbed me from behind. A cloth pressed over my mouth, the world blurred, and I woke up in a lavish but windowless room, silk sheets, golden chandeliers, and locked steel doors. Panic surged through me. "Hello? Anyone?" My voice echoed. The door opened, and in walked the most dangerously handsome man I had ever seen. Tall, broad-shouldered, with piercing dark eyes, sharp jawline, and a tailored black suit that screamed power and money. Tattoos peeked from his collar. He smiled coldly. "Welcome, Elena. You saved my life. Now you're mine." Alessandro Rossi, ruthless mafia kingpin who controlled half the East Coast's underground empire, stood before me like a god of shadows. He explained everything in a calm, deep voice that sent chills down my spine. The Aphoxa was his secret shifter ability, a rare gift he used to escape enemies and spy on rivals. No one knew except his most trusted men. When the rival gang ambushed him, he shifted to survive, got trapped, and a simple, kind-hearted girl, saved him. "You showed me mercy when the world only gave me betrayal," he said, stepping closer. His cologne was intoxicating, a mix of cedar and danger. I backed away until I hit the wall. "Let me go! This is kidnapping!" He laughed softly, a sound both beautiful and terrifying. "Yeah, kidnapping? No, cara mia?" "This is protection. My world is blood and bullets. You're too pure for it. But now that you've touched my soul, I can't let you leave. You will stay here in my mansion under my watch." Days turned into weeks. He locked every exit. Guards followed me everywhere. Yet, in small moments, I saw cracks in his armor. He brought me books I loved, cooked Italian meals himself, and watched me with an intensity that felt like hunger and worship combined. I tried to escape 3 times. Once through the garden at midnight, once by bribing a maid, and once by pretending to be sick. Each time, Alessandro caught me personally. The 3rd time, he pinned me against the marble hallway, his body heat radiating through his shirt. "Why do you run from me, Elena?" His breath brushed my ear. "Because you're a criminal. You hurt people," I shouted, tears stinging my eyes. His expression darkened, but then softened in a way that surprised even him. "I was born into this life, blood on my hands since I was 15. But you saved a monster without knowing what I was. Your kindness is a drug I can't quit." That night, he didn't lock me in the room. Instead, he took me to the rooftop terrace overlooking the city lights. For the first time, he spoke of his loneliness, the betrayals, the endless wars, the emptiness of power. I listened, heart aching despite myself. He wasn't just ruthless, he was broken. And my compassion was slowly healing cracks he never knew existed. Months passed in this golden cage. I taught the children of his loyal men's families in a private wing of the mansion, bringing laughter and learning to a place that once knew only violence. Alessandro watched from the shadows, his cold eyes warming every time I smiled at a kid. Unexpected twist came when his biggest rival, Victor Kane, launched an attack on the mansion. Bullets rained. Chaos erupted. In the panic, I saw a young guard, barely 18, bleeding out behind a pillar. Without thinking, I ran through the gunfire, dragged him to safety, and pressed my scarf against his wound, just like I did with the little fox. Alessandro saw it all from the security feed. When the fight ended and Victor's men retreated, Alessandro stormed into the room where I was bandaging the boy. His suit was torn, face splattered with blood that wasn't his. He pulled me into his arms roughly, crushing me against his chest. "What? You could have died!" he roared. "Why risk yourself for one of my men?" I looked up at him, trembling but steady, because he's a person, just like you were a fox who needed help. That moment shattered something inside the Mafia King. He carried me to his private quarters, hands shaking as he wiped the dirt and blood from my face. "You are impossible, Elena Hayes. You see good where there is only darkness." His voice cracked. The first time I heard vulnerability from the man who ruled with iron fists. He confessed how my daily kindnesses had changed him. The way I forgave the guards who watched me, the way I planted flowers in the barren courtyard, the way I cried for the stray cat that wandered in. I thought love was weakness. Now I know it's the only strength I never had. He dropped to one knee, not with a ring, but with a simple promise. "I will burn my empire if it means keeping you safe and free. But I beg you, stay. Not as my prisoner, as my queen." I was speechless. The ruthless man who locked me up was now begging, eyes glassy with unshed tears. The emotional climax hit during a stormy night when rival clans united against Alessandro, forcing him into a final deadly confrontation. I was supposed to stay hidden in the panic room. But when I heard through the calms that he was outnumbered and wounded, my heart overruled fear. I snuck out, found a hidden passage the maids had whispered about, and reached the old warehouse district, the same place I once saved the fox. Gunfire echoed. Alessandro was on his knees, blood pouring from his side, surrounded by enemies. Victor laughed, raising his gun for the kill shot. I stepped into the open, voice ringing clear through the rain. "A stop! He doesn't have to die." Every gun turned toward me. Alessandro's eyes widened in pure terror. For me. "Elena, get back!" But I walked forward, hands raised. "You all fight for power and money. I saved a fox once, not knowing it was him. He's capable of change because someone showed him kindness. Let that be enough." My words hung in the air, absurd yet powerful. One by one, some of Victor's men lowered their weapons, moved by the sheer selflessness of a simple teacher standing between monsters. Victor sneered and pulled the trigger anyway. But Alessandro lunged, taking the bullet meant for me. He collapsed in my arms, whispering, "Worth it? For you?" Colons exploded as his remaining loyalists charged in. In the battle, I held Alessandro's head in my lap, pressing my hands to his wound, tears mixing with rain. Don't you dare leave me now," I sobbed. "I saved you once as a fox. I won't lose you as a man." His men won the night, but the real victory was the look in Alessandro's eyes when he realized I had chosen to fight for him. Not out of fear, but out of the same pure heart that once rescued a trapped animal. He survived. And in that hospital wing of his mansion, surrounded by machines and guards, he finally said the words that changed everything. "I love you, Elena, not because you saved me, but because you made me want to be a man worth saving." Recovery was slow and tender. Alessandro dismantled parts of his empire, freeing those who wanted out, making amends where possible, all while keeping me close but never locked again. I walked freely through the mansion gardens we planted together. He cooked for me every Sunday, learning my favorite American recipes and mixing them with his Italian roots. Twists kept coming. A rival who turned ally after witnessing my courage. A secret about my own forgotten family ties to an old protective network that even Alessandro respected. Our bond deepened through late-night talks, shared laughter, and quiet moments where he let me see the boy he once was before the mafia claimed him. Kindness had cracked open his ruthless heart, and love poured in. Healing us both, life bloomed in ways I never imagined. We traveled quietly to the serene landscapes of Canada and the cozy countryside of England, places where no one knew his name. I continued teaching, now with resources to help more children in need. Alessandro stood beside me, no longer the king of shadows, but a man building something better. The ruthless mafia king who once locked me away had become the protector who set me free, free to love him back with all the compassion that started it all. Our story wasn't perfect, but it proved that even the darkest souls can find light when someone dares to show them mercy first. And in the end, the little fox I saved me right back. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of the renovated east wing of the mansion where Alessandro had turned an old armory into a sunlit classroom for the children of his former soldiers and staff members who had chosen to stay and darkness take you again, and he pulled me closer, breathing in the scent of my hair, and for a long time we just sat there in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes when two broken souls find peace in each other. And as the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, we drove back to the mansion where a surprise waited for me in the grand dining room. A candlelit dinner prepared by Alessandro himself, with all my favorite dishes: pasta carbonara, fresh salad with balsamic glaze, and warm garlic bread, and a bottle of fine wine from his private collection that he had saved for a special night. And we ate slowly, talking about everything and nothing, laughing when he tried to mimic my American accent and failing adorably. And after dinner, he led me upstairs to the master bedroom that we now shared openly, without locks or guards at the door, and he undressed me with reverent hands, and his touch gentle yet possessive, kissing every inch of skin he revealed as if I were the most precious thing he had ever held. And when we came together that night, it was slow and deep, and filled with whispered promises and moans that echoed off the walls. And in the afterglow, as I lay curled against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, I felt truly safe for the first time since he had taken me. And the next few weeks blurred into a beautiful rhythm of teaching in the mornings, walks in the gardens, in the afternoons, and quiet evenings where Alessandro would read to me from classic books or tell me stories of his travels across Europe. And one day, while we were in the library sorting through old books, I found a small leather-bound journal hidden behind a row of dusty volumes, and when I opened it, I realized it was Alessandro's own handwriting from years ago, filled with dark entries about deals gone wrong, betrayals, and the weight of leadership. But as the dates grew more recent, the tone shifted. There were entries about a kind girl who saved a fox, about her smile that haunted his dreams, about how her compassion made him question everything he had built. And my eyes filled with tears as I read the words. I never thought I could feel this way until Elena and Alessandro walked in at that moment, seeing the journal in my hands, and instead of anger or embarrassment, he simply took it from me, gently closed it, and pulled me into his arms, saying that was the old me, Kara, the man who didn't know love until you showed it to him. And we spent the rest of that evening talking about those pages, turning painful memories into shared strength. And as winter approached, we decided to take a trip to escape the cities, chill flying first to the misty countryside of England, where we stayed in a charming cottage near the Lake District, surrounded by rolling green hills and ancient stone walls. And there, in the peaceful, quiet, Alessandro proposed to me properly, not with a grand gesture, but with a simple antique ring that had belonged to his grandmother, a delicate gold band with a single emerald that sparkled in the firelight. And he got down on one knee in front of the crackling fireplace, his voice thick with emotion. Elena Hayes, will you marry me and be my light for the rest of our days? And I said yes, through happy tears, throwing my arms around his neck. And we celebrated that night with slow dances to soft music and kisses that tasted like forever. And from England, we traveled to the rugged beauty of Canada, staying in a luxurious cabin in the Canadian Rockies where snow dusted the peaks. And we spent days hiking through forests that reminded me of the place where I had first released the little fox, and nights wrapped in blankets by the fire, talking about our future dreams of a family of children who would know kindness before power. And one evening, as we stood on the deck watching the northern lights dance across the sky in vibrant greens and purples, Alessandro held me from behind his chin, resting on my shoulder, and he said softly, you know, I still shift sometimes when the moon is full, just to feel that freedom. And I smiled, turning to face him, and replied, then shift for me tonight. I want to see the fox again, the one I saved. And he did, changing into the beautiful, sleek fox with intelligent eyes that I remembered so well. And I sat on the wooden floor, letting him curl up in my lap, stroking his soft fur and whispering the same words I had spoken all those months ago. "You're safe now, little one, I've got you." And when he shifted back to human form, he was laughing with genuine joy, pulling me into a deep kiss that left us both breathless, and we made love under the glow of the aurora. Feeling more connected than ever, and back home in the mansion, the wedding preparations began slowly and intimately because Alessandro wanted it to reflect us, not the old world of excess and fear. We chose a small ceremony in the garden I had helped plant with close friends, new and old, teaching colleagues who had worried about my sudden disappearance and now celebrated my happiness, and a few of Alessandro's most loyal men who had become like family. And on the day of the wedding, I wore a flowing white gown with lace details that made me feel like a princess, and Alessandro stood at the end of the aisle in a tailored black suit, looking every bit the powerful man he was, but with love shining in his eyes, instead of ruthlessness. And as I walked toward him on the arm of one of my old friends, the air filled with the scent of roses and jasmine. And when we exchanged vows, my voice trembled with emotion as I promised to always show him the kindness he deserved, and he vowed to protect me and cherish me and build a life worthy of the girl who saved a fox. And after we were pronounced husband and wife, the celebration was filled with laughter, dancing, and toasts that brought tears to my eyes. And as the night wound down, Alessandro swept me away to our private suite, where he carried me over the threshold like a true gentleman, and we spent the night lost in each other, celebrating the beginning of our forever. And the months that followed were filled with quiet joys. I continued teaching, expanding the school to include more children from the local community, and Alessandro focused on growing his legitimate businesses, traveling with me to meetings in New York and London, where people saw him as a successful entrepreneur rather than a feared king. And there were still challenges. Of course, old rivals who tested the new boundaries, but Alessandro handled them with calculated restraint, never resorting to the violence of his past, and always coming home to me with open arms. And one spring morning, I woke up feeling different, a gentle nausea that turned out to be the most wonderful surprise when the doctor confirmed I was pregnant. And when I told Alessandro, he dropped to his knees in front of me, pressing his forehead to my still flat stomach, whispering in Italian words of love and protection. And from that day on, he became even more attentive, bringing me breakfast in bed, rubbing my feet after long days, and reading baby books with me late into the night. And as my belly grew, we prepared the nursery together, painting walls in soft pastels and filling it with books and toys. And on warm summer evenings, we would sit in the garden with his hand resting protectively on bump, feeling the baby kick and talking about names and dreams for our child. And the birth itself was intense and beautiful in a private wing of the mansion with the best doctors and midwives. And when our daughter came into the world with a strong cry and tiny fists waving, Alessandro held her first, tears streaming down his face as he looked at me with awe and said, "She has your eyes, Elena, your kindness already." And we named her Sophia Rose Rossi, a name that blended our worlds. And as I watched my husband, the once ruthless mafia king, cradle our newborn with such tenderness, I felt the full circle of our journey. From the rainy night I saved a trapped fox to this moment of pure love and family, and the years that followed brought more children, a son named Luca, who had his father's dark hair and fierce spirit, and another daughter named Isabella, who shared my love for teaching. And the mansion transformed from a fortress into a true home, filled with laughter, toys, and the sound of little feet running through the halls. And Alessandro taught the children self-defense, but also compassion, reading them stories about kindness and taking them on trips to help at animal shelters, reminding them of how their mother once saved a fox. And I watched him become the father I always knew he could be, patient and loving, guiding them with strength tempered by the lessons I had taught him. And through it all, our love only deepened, with stolen kisses in the kitchen, midnight talks on the balcony, and quiet moments where he would shift into the fox form just for fun, letting the children play with his fluffy tail and the scratch behind his ears. And as Sophia started school and Luca learned to ride a bike and Isabella drew pictures of our family, I realized that the cage he once built around me had become the foundation of a life richer than any freedom I could have imagined alone. And even when old shadows from his past occasionally resurfaced, Alessandro faced them with me by his side, our bond unbreakable. And on our 10th wedding anniversary, we returned to that same park where we sat on the bench, years earlier now, with our 3 children playing nearby, and Alessandro pulled me close under the golden autumn and bottom leaves and whispered, "Thank you, Elena, for saving me twice, once as a fox and once as a man." And I smiled, resting my head on his chest, listening to the steady heartbeat of the ruthless king who had learned to love. And as the sun set on another perfect day, I knew our story would continue with more than chapters of kindness and courage, and the kind of love that turns darkness into light, and the little fox that started it all remained. Our secret symbol of how one small act of compassion can change everything forever. And we lived those years with open hearts, building memories that filled our home with warmth. And as the children grew older, they learned the full story in pieces, understanding that their father had once been a powerful man who changed because their mother showed him mercy, and they carried that legacy forward in their own ways. Sophia becoming a veterinarian who rescued animals, Luca, a protector who used his strength for good, and Isabella, a teacher like me, spreading kindness in classrooms. And through it all, Alessandro and I remained each other's anchor, stealing moments alone to remember the rainy night, the locked room, the rooftop confessions, and the gunshot that nearly took from me. And every time he looked at me with those dark eyes full of love, I felt the same pull that had drawn me to the injured fox so long ago, the pull of a soul that needed saving and found it in the arms of a kind girl from Seattle. And our life together became a testament to the power of choosing love over fear, compassion over cruelty, and second chances over past mistakes. And as we watched our family thrive in the home we had built together, I held Alessandro's hand, knowing that the ruthless mafia king who once locked me up had ultimately set us both free in the most beautiful way possible. In the story of the fox and the girl continued to unfold day by day, year by year, wrapped in the kind of enduring love that inspires hope in everyone who hears it. And we kept living, fully embracing every sunrise and every challenge with the same hearts that had brought us together in the first place. The years continued to unfold in our beautiful home, where the once cold marble halls now echoed with the laughter of our growing children. And every morning I woke up beside Alessandro, feeling the steady warmth of his body next to mine, his arm draped protectively over my waist, even in sleep, as if he still feared losing me after all this time. And our daughter Sophia, now 8 years old, would burst into the room with her dark curls bouncing and her bright eyes so much like mine, climbing onto the bed to tell us about the dream she had of helping injured animals, just like her mother once helped a little fox. And Alessandro would smile, that soft smile reserved only for family, pulling her close and whispering, "Ring." In Italian, how proud he was of her kind heart, while our son Luca, 5 years old, with his father's strong jaw and intense gaze, would follow shortly after, pretending to be a brave knight protecting his little sister, Isabella, who at 3 toddled in with her favorite stuffed fox toy clutched in her tiny hands. And the 4 of us would spend lazy weekend mornings in the large kitchen, where Alessandro had learned to cook all my favorite American breakfasts. Pancakes with fresh berries, scrambled eggs, and crispy bacon alongside his traditional Italian espresso, and we would eat together at the long wooden table, talking about plans for the day. Sophia wanting to visit the animal shelter, Luca begging to practice soccer in the garden, and Isabella simply wanting to be carried around on her papa's shoulders. And after breakfast, I would head to the expanded school wing, where now over 50 children from both our inner circle and the local community learned letters, numbers, and most importantly, the value of kindness and compassion through stories, songs, and hands-on activities that I designed myself, while Alessandro managed his legitimate business empire from his home office, making calls to partners in New York, London, and Vancouver, ensuring every deal was fair and every employee treated with respect, something he had promised me he would always uphold. And in the afternoons, when lessons ended, the children would join us in the garden, where we had added a playground swing set and a small pond with colorful fish, and there Alessandro would shift into his fox form for short, playful moments, letting Sophia and Luca chase him gently while Isabella giggled and tried to pet his fluffy tail, and I would sit on the bench watching my once ruthless husband, now a devoted father, rolling in the siding so grass with our kids, his powerful body moving with surprising grace in animal form, and when he shifted back, he would scoop all three children into his arms, carrying them inside for afternoon snacks of fruit and cookies that we baked together. And as the sun dipped lower, we often took family walks through the nearby woods, the same woods where I had once released the little fox years ago. And during these walks, Alessandro would hold my hand tightly, interlacing our fingers, while the kids ran ahead collecting leaves and stones, and he would tell me quietly how every day with me and our family healed another scar from his violent past, reminding him that power meant nothing without love. And I would squeeze his hand back, sharing stories from my teaching day or funny moments with the children. And these conversations deepened our bond even further, turning us into true partners who faced life. Side by side in one crisp autumn evening after the kids were tucked into bed with stories of brave animals and kind heroes, Alessandro took me to the rooftop terrace where it all began years ago, the same place where he had first shown me his vulnerability under the city lights, and now with mansions, gardens blooming below, and the distant sound of our children's soft breathing through the baby monitor, he pulled me into his arms, dancing slowly to a soft melody playing from hidden speakers, and he whispered against my ear, "Elena, my love, my savior, my queen, you have given me everything. I never knew I needed a family, a home, a reason to be better," and I looked up into his dark eyes, seeing the man who once locked me away, now completely open and devoted, and I replied, "You gave me adventure, passion, and a love so deep it changed my world too, Alex." And that night we made love under the stars. Slow and tender, filled with the kind of passion that only grows stronger with time, his hands exploring my body with reverence while I traced the scars on his chest, each one a reminder of battles he no longer fought alone. And afterward, as we lay tangled in the sheets, he told me about new plans to expand the school into a full community center, offering free education and support for families in need, something he wanted to fund entirely from his businesses as a way to give back, and I kissed him, deeply proud of the man he had become. And the following months were busy with construction and planning meetings where I worked alongside architects and teachers, designing classrooms, play areas, and even a small animal rescue corner inspired by our fox story. And Alessandro handled the legal and financial side, ensuring everything was done right without any shadows of his old life touching the project. And during this time, Sophia started showing real talent with animals, helping at the shelter on weekends where she gently bandaged wounded birds and fed orphan kittens, reminding me so much of myself at her age. And Luca developed a protective streak, always looking out for his younger sister and the smaller kids at school, practicing the self-defense moves his father taught him, but only to defend, never to harm, and never to harm. And Isabella, with her sweet nature, loved drawing pictures of our family, including a little fox in every scene. And one winter, when snow blanketed the grounds, we decided to take the children on a special trip back to the Canadian Rockies, the same cabin where Alessandro had proposed to me. And there, in the snowy wonderland, we built snowmen, roasted marshmallows by the fire, and watched the northern lights again, Sophia and Luca gasping in awe, while Isabella pointed with chubby fingers and Alessandro held me close, whispering how this place marked the beginning of our real freedom together. And Christmas Eve, we exchanged gifts around the tree, Sophia receiving a real stethoscope for her animal doctor dreams, Luca getting a new soccer ball signed by his favorite player, and Isabella a collection of stuffed animals, including a special fox. And for me, Alessandro had arranged a private evening where, after the kids were asleep, he led me outside to a heated gazebo he had secretly built overlooking the frozen lake. And there, under twinkling lights, he renewed his vows to me, promising again to cherish, protect, and love me with every breath. And I did the same, tears of joy freezing on my cheek. The cold air, and when we returned home, the community center opened with a grand but intimate ceremony filled with families, teachers, and even some of Alessandro's former associates who had chosen the path of legitimacy and As I cut the ribbon with Sophia, holding one end and Luca the other, I felt overwhelming pride seeing how far we had come from a locked room and a ruthless king to this moment of community and hope, and the center quickly became a hub of activity with after-school programs, parenting classes, and animal therapy sessions where children could interact with rescued pets, learning empathy and care. And Alessandro often visited, surprising everyone with his gentle demeanor as he read stories to the younger kids or helped set up new equipment. His presence no longer intimidating, but reassuring, and as spring arrived bringing fresh blooms to our garden, I discovered I was pregnant. Again, the news filling our home with even more excitement, Sophia and Luca jumping with joy, while Isabella patted my growing belly and Alessandro became even more attentive, cooking nutritious meals, accompanying me to every doctor appointment, and massaging my feet every evening. And when our fourth child, a baby boy named Matteo, arrived healthy and strong with a loud cry that echoed through the mansion, Alessandro held him with the same awe he had shown at each birth, tears in his eyes, as he placed the tiny bundle in my arms and whispered another miracle. Thanks to you, my love. And the years rolled on with birthday parties, school events, family vacations to England, where we revisited the Lake District cottage, now with all four children running through the meadows, and quiet evenings at home where Alessandro and I would steal away to the library reading together or simply talking about our dreams for the future. And through every challenge, whether it was a child's illness, a business setback, or the rare resurfacing of old rival, Alessandro stood firm beside me, using his strength wisely and his love openly, never returning to the darkness that once defined him, and our children grew into compassionate, confident individuals. Sophia volunteering at shelters and dreaming of becoming a wildlife veterinarian, Luca balancing sports with helping at the community center, teaching younger boys about respect and protection, Isabella creating art that celebrated kindness, and Matteo with his curious nature, always asking questions about the world, and the fox story that started it all. And as we celebrated our 15th wedding anniversary with a quiet family dinner followed by a private moment on the rooftop, Alessandro pulled me close and said softly, "Looking back at that rainy night when you saved me, I never imagined this life filled with laughter, love, and children who carry your heart." And I smiled, resting against him, feeling the same gratitude because the ruthless mafia king who locked me up had unlocked a world of beauty and possibility for both of us, and our family continued to thrive, the mansion evolving into a true sanctuary of love and learning. And even as the children entered their teenage years, with all the joys and challenges that brought, we navigated them together with patience and understanding, Alessandro teaching them about responsibility, while I nurtured their empathy. And one by one, they learned the full story of how their mother saved a fox who turned out to be their father, and how the single act of kindness transformed everything, and they carried that lesson forward. Sophia rescuing more animals, Lucas standing up for friends in need, Isabella using her art to spread messages of compassion, and Matteo growing into a thoughtful boy who loved listening to stories of courage and heart. And through it all, Alessandro and I remained deeply in love, stealing kisses in the kitchen, dancing in the living room after the kids were asleep, and making love with the same passion that had always burned between us, only now enriched by years of shared memories. And as another decade passed, and our children started building their own paths, Sophia heading to university for veterinary science, Luca pursuing studies in community leadership, Isabella exploring art school, and Matteo still happily exploring the world, with wide eyes we watched with pride, knowing we had created a legacy rooted in the kindness that began it all. And on quiet evenings, Alessandro would still shift into his fox form for old time's sake, letting me stroke his fur and whisper the same words, "You're safe now, little one. I've got you." And he would shift back, pulling me into his arms, saying, "And I will always have you, Elena. Elena." Forever. And our story kept writing itself day by day, year by year, a beautiful tapestry of love growth, and the enduring power of one small compassionate act that changed the ruthless king and the kind girl into something greater, a family, a home, and a light that continued to shine for generations.